The two great unscrupulous businesswomen, roaming 70,000 miles, Primordial Spirit Guide. Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 146 based on novel. So let's start. Qin Mu executed 9 Heaven's Eyes Awakening skill to look at the 2 vertical and horizontal knife lights. The chest was sliced into 2, and it was hard to say how many limbs came falling out, scattering in all directions. Some flew into the sky, some went into the forest, and some escaped into the earth. Heaven knife. Shingan's voice came from all directions. You will all become part of my collection sooner or later. A majestic figure rushed over and raised his hands with which the knives fell, mincing all the broken limbs that didn't escape in time. Grandpa Butcher, don't let go of Shingan. Qin Mu shouted. However, his cultivation wasn't strong enough for his voice to travel that far, so Granny Sai immediately transmitted her voice, and Butcher exploded with a shout. A pig slaughter knife fell from the sky and stabbed into the ground. Knife chi slashed in all directions underground, trying to force out Shingan's body parts that were escaping below. At the same time, another knife flew up and sliced through the air. After a moment, 2 knives flew back, and Butcher grabbed hold of them while jumping away as though he was flying. On his way, he said, he was struck by my knife chi and won't be able to escape from my sense. I'll come back in a bit. Village chief and the rest still haven't come back. They are still guests at Old Ma's place. I was worried about here, so I came back earlier. Qin Mu relaxed, but at that moment Blind, who was at his side, suddenly swayed and fell from the sky. Qin Mu immediately grabbed him, and his body suddenly became incomparably heavy. Blind's divine spear Long Tuor had lost its consciousness as well, since it had suffered severe damage just like its master. It was just that the spear was from a black dragon's bones. It was a divine dragon, one who was both psychic and intelligent, as well as truly heavy, and it pressed down on Qin Mu with immense weight. Granny Sai stretched her hand out to grab him, and was dragged down from the sky too. Only when they were about to hit the ground, did they halt in the air. The 3 people landed safely, and the final flood dragon on Qin Mu's body slid down and lay on the ground like a dead snake, gasping for breath. Bloody foam kept flowing out from its mouth. Qin Mu forced himself to stand straight, even if his hands and legs were trembling uncontrollably. His injuries were also extremely heavy, barely not resulting in his death. If it wasn't for Blind, Cripple, and Deaf who had saved him in time, he would have been captured or killed by Shingan. Even when he had borrowed the Flood Dragon's power to join the battle, he had shown a severe lack of battle power and experience. In a life-and-death fight, with an existence like Shingan, he could only exhaust all his strength in turning the tables with some clever tricks. Luckily, he still succeeded in that this time. However, when he looked around and saw that the manor was covered with experts that were all heavily injured, he couldn't help being aghast. Not to mention existences like Blind, Deaf, Cripple, Emperor Yangfeng, and Li Qianxing, even his flood dragons were all much stronger and terrifying than some existences of cult master level in the martial world. Many strong practitioners, like Empress Dowager, and various female heroes, as well as existences, such as Yu Zhaoqing, were actually all defeated. If it wasn't for that dose of supplement, everyone would have probably been killed by Shingan. Strong, he is really King strong. Oh. Just as Qin Mu started speaking, his ears began to hurt as Granny Sai pulled on his earlobes. Saying vulgarities again, she said unpleasantly. Who taught you that? Butcher, or is it Patriarch? Or is it some shady gang of scoundrels you have friended outside? Oh. I will stop, Granny, let go, please. Granny Sai let go, and Qin Mu sighed in relief. He rubbed his ear and probed, Granny Sai, now that Li Qianxing has left, you don't need to continue disguising yourself in ugly skins, right? Don't be sad. Who's sad? Granny Sai walked forward while shaking her head. Li Qianxing is dead, so I can finally be free of my burden. I should be happy instead. Even though she said that, she didn't show any smile, but instead had a sorrowful expression. She avoided Qin Mu, for she didn't want him to see her when she was weak. She summoned the demons in the halls to carry everyone that was injured inside the buildings. Qin Mu summoned the injured flood dragons over, and they brought all of Shingan's body parts they had snatched away, throwing all of them into the true dragon's nest. The inner space within it could block any connection, but Qin Mu was still not at ease. He made the Emperor's disc transform into the true Dragon Lord, and had it enter the dragon's nest. Cripple was hugging his legs when he fainted, so Qin Mu had to waste quite some effort to pull them away. He then found Def's painting and threw it in the seal of the true dragon's nest as well. After doing all of that, he let out a sigh of relief and walked into the hall to help treat everyone. However, there were some people whose injuries were too heavy and they could die at any moment. If he cured everyone one by one, it would take too much time, and before he could reach the end, a number of people would have already died. Qin Mu could only call the dragon Qilin over. Fatty dragon, I've reared you for 1,000 days to be useful now, so go lick all of them. The dragon Qilin hesitated, whining, Cult Master, where would I have that much drool? Shush, don't say drool. Hu Linga immediately jumped on the dragon Qilin's ear and whispered, call it dragon saliva. If you call it drool, we won't be able to sell it in the future. Lick them properly, and I'll ask young master to increase your meal. The dragon Qilin was instantly motivated and headed off for work. Sister Linga, don't forget about increased meals. Qin Mu picked out the people who had the most severe injuries and diagnosed them first. He fetched some silver needles to first seal their wounds and suppress their injuries. He then refined pills to treat them, but his hands were still trembling, and 2 furnaces of medicine were spoiled. He composed himself and first treated his own injuries. Once his hands no longer trembled, he then started to diagnose others and refine pills for others. There were a lot of casualties, and all their injuries were different. Qin Mu first treated them once just to prevent their injuries from erupting, so their lives wouldn't be in danger. Only after that did he start to carefully diagnose them. His flood dragons were also injured pretty badly. They showed their wounds to the dragon Qilin for him to lick, but he couldn't bring himself to do it, making those flood dragons curse him with Maha Maha. Ling Yuxiu, Yang Jingjing, Sai Yunxiang, and Hu Linga also came to help. After treating everyone for half a day, Qin Mu was completely exhausted and simply couldn't hold on any longer. The injuries on his body were not yet healed yet, so he could only go and rest first. Luckily, there were no more lethal injuries left. Most of the patients had already woken up, even if they still needed more attention to fully heal. Qin Mu slept for the whole night. When he woke up, the sky was still not light yet, and he could hear Granny Sai's voice. He walked out of the room to see her directing over a dozen mermaids to make breakfast. He sat down on the stone stairs in front of the hall and looked at her back, his heart at peace. It was Granny Sai, not Li Qianxing. The old cult master had really died. What concerned that man? Qin Mu had no liking for him. Li Qianxing wasn't qualified for the title of cult master, making Heavenly Saint cult miss out on 40 years of development. If it wasn't for Patriarch, who acted as the stabilizing force, Heavenly Saint cult would have long been annexed by Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yangfeng. However, at the end, he had still managed to do what a master should do. He had understood the great educational part of great educational heavenly devil scriptures. He had comprehended it and passed it down. However, when one looked at his life, failures were still in the majority. Granny Sai turned back to look at him, and Qin Mu, who was on the stone steps, smiled at her. The east was suffused in white, as though a huge fish had flipped over on its belly. The sun rose and roasted its skin into a reddish-yellow color. After breakfast, Qin Mu treated himself first, then when his injuries were somewhat better, he went to treat others. The girls also came to help. After being busy for more than half a day, it was hard to say how many furnaces of pills Qin Mu had refined. He had almost exhausted himself to the brink again, and the spirit herbs in his Dao Tai sack were more or less used up. Those in Dragon Rearing Sovereign's Dao Tai sack were also nearly exhausted. Qin Mu wanted to go bring more himself, but he truly didn't have the strength, so he could only write down the names of what he needed and let Hu Linga ride the Dragon Chiline to Relax Prefecture to bring them. The owner of the herb shop is from Heavenly Saint cult, so Saint Xiong, you shall follow and get them to prepare the herbs. If there's no one there, use a fast ship to transport them from where you can. Also, prepare 26 huge cauldrons and a steamer that could be used to cook humans. Some of these people's injuries are very complicated, so I'll have to boil and steam them. Yang Jingjing was excited. I want to go as well. Qin Mu hesitated for a moment. Good sister, I promised to bring you out to play, but I didn't expect to encounter something like that. I have no time to play with you now, so it'll be good for you to go to Relax Prefecture and take a walk there. Sai Yunxiang was delighted. Even if it's the property of the cult, I will still have to charge for the herbs. Mobilizing fast ships also requires quite a bit of great abundance coins. Qin Mu waved his hand. Linga has the money, don't worry. Hu Linga and Sai Yunxiang looked each other in the eye, and sparks flew between the demon and the human. There was an atmosphere like a huge battle was about to break out. The two girls sat on the Dragon Chiline's back and went out of the manor. Hu Linga sneered. Saint Xiong, you can scam the young master, but you can't scam me. You can forget about taking advantage of me. Sai Yunxiang chuckled and said, I naturally know how good Linga is, so I said those words to Cult Master. Think about it, most of the people injured are not from Heavenly Saint cult. But since the Cult Master still wants the sacred cult to prepare the medicine, we naturally have to collect money, but from who? Not from the Cult Master, certainly. We will then collect it from the Emperor. Sister Linga, stop haggling with me. Instead, you should raise the price as high as possible and let us ruthlessly earn money from the Emperor. Hu Linga shook her head. There's morality in trading. You can't scam the Emperor either. You have to charge according to the prices of the spirit herbs. Sai Yunxiang argued with Hu Linga, but she didn't yield no matter what. The two girls settled on the prices, and Hu Linga thought to herself, after buying herbs from you, I shall give a false report to the Emperor. That way, I will be able to earn a huge profit. If I wallow in the mire with you, I will have to split the loot with you, but if I cut you out of the equation, all of the loot will belong to me. Around 10 days were required for the medicine shop in Relax Prefecture to prepare all the herbs. In the meantime, Qin Mu finished recuperating, but there were still some hidden injuries that were yet to heal. After doing nothing for a few days and not seeing Butcher returning, Qin Mu suddenly thought of something. Wang Muren's insight is extraordinary, and he had suggested Sister Yushio and I to work together to found the cultivation method of 6 directions, primordial spirit, which would benefit the future generations. I have been really busy these few days, so I had totally forgotten about it. He found Ling Yushio and told her about it. Astonished, she asked if the cultivation method of 6 directions primordial spirit was really founded by us. Could we be considered masters? Masters? Qin Mu burst out laughing. Is Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor considered a master? When Ling Yushio talked about Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, she was full of respect and said, how could Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor be just a master? The 3 basic sword forms are enough for his name to go down in history and never be forgotten by the world. Qin Mu smiled and said, "The merit of his 3 basic sword forms is somewhat weaker than that of our 6 directions primordial spirit. As long as we can complete the technique and cultivation method of 6 directions primordial spirit, the paths, skills, and divine arts will all take a huge step ahead, benefiting billions of people." Ling Yuxiu's mind was blown. She found it hard to believe. The 6 directions primordial spirit that we cultivated by accident is really that important. Then what are we waiting for? She immediately pulled Qin Mu's hand and walked out of the hall excitedly. Emperor Yangfeng, Empress Dowager, and the rest of the patient had been brought out by the deer demons to bask in the sunshine. Emperor Yangfeng was injured pretty heavily, and had been talking to Yu Zhaoqing, when he saw the pair of youngsters running out excitedly. "Xiao, where are you going?" "To cultivate 6 directions primordial spirit." Emperor Yangfeng stared at her blankly. 6 directions primordial spirit. How to cultivate it? Ling Yuxiu held Qin Mu's hand as she ran into the distance, her voice coming from afar. Primordial spirit dual cultivation. My brother said this is called primordial spirit dual cultivation. Emperor Yangfeng instantly had a feeling that his white cabbage had been ravaged by a wild boar, and that the wild boar had come back again to ravage it once more. He immediately began to struggle to get up, wanting to stop this pair of youths, but a few deer demons walked over. They pressed him down, giving him no choice but to remain in place. A female deer demon held some flowers in her hands and signaled for the emperor to not move, then placed the beautiful flowers on his head. Some mermaids walked over and presented him with red fruits that were making a fuss. A bunch of them clambered in the plate, giving him a shock. The tree demons surveyed the sickbeds, and whoever was not well behaved would be whipped on the buttocks. Soon, all the famous people of the martial world, the Emperor and Empress Dowager included, were much quieter. After the demons finished their patrol, the Emperor wanted to hurry over to catch up to the youths, but Empress Dowager said lazily, "Emperor, save yourself the trouble. The younger generations will do all right on their own. If you worry so much, won't Xiao be unable to marry in the future?" Mother might not know, but the danger concealed in primordial spirit dual cultivation is extremely huge. It should not be done if the 2 people aren't husband and wife. If Xiao cultivated primordial spirit dual cultivation with him, their primordial spirits would resonate with each other, and they would ascend to bliss together. If after that she married someone in the future, she wouldn't be able to resonate with my son-in-law in the future. And without resonance, there won't be any feeling. If the pleasure of their primordial spirit resonating together is not present, she will divorce even if she marries. Empress Dowager smiled and said, "Take him in as your son-in-law then. What's there to be alarmed about? What's more, who dares to divorce a princess of the royal family?" Emperor Yangfeng was silent for a moment. "Mother, his heavenly devil cult master and also human emperor, I'm not too at ease." Empress Dowager also fell silent as she knew what he meant. Heavenly devil cult master had an overpowering influence. The emperor was the person with the highest influence in the imperial court, while heavenly devil cult master was the person with the highest influence in the martial world. The influence of heavenly devil cult had spread throughout it, and even to every corner of the imperial court. It was especially so when Qin Mu had become the heavenly devil cult master. Heavenly devil cult prospered more and more, surpassing their peak period in history. No matter if it was Dao sect or Great Thunderclap Monastery, they were all crippled by Qin Mu, and even the imperial court could no longer contend against it. After all, the imperial court was reforming, and it needed the help of heavenly devil cult for many. So many experts from the cult had entered the imperial court. Eternal Peace Empire, from the bottom to the top, was filled with the influence of heavenly devil cult. Besides that, Qin Mu was much more open-minded than Dao Master and Ru Lai. He had reformed Heavenly Devil cult, and set up school halls, learning from Imperial Preceptor's actions, and grooming an endless supply of talents for Heavenly Devil cult. In just 2 years after Qin Mu had become the cult master, he had invoked a huge transformation, and this worried Emperor and Empress Dowager. What was even more worrying was that Qin Mu had many experts around him, and even the identity of the human emperor. If he took out his human emperor's seal, even Dao Sect, Great Thunderclap Monastery, and Little Jade Capital would have to listen to his commands. That would be terrifying. Looking from this point, Qin Mu was definitely not the best candidate for the emperor's son-in-law. If he took up that role, it would be easy for him to seize power from him. That was what Emperor Yangfeng was worried about. While he was still alive, Qin Mu wouldn't be able to seize his power, but once he was gone, the change of ownership could happen with a snap of his fingers. Without anyone's notice, the simple and honest child that had come to Eternal Peace Empire 2 years ago had grown into a fierce tiger that could fight with dragons. It was truly terrifying. Even if Qin Mu didn't have the thought to seize power, what about the next Heavenly Devil Cult Master? Who could be certain that the next Heavenly Devil Cult Master, who inherited the power left behind by Qin Mu, would not stir at the thought of being an emperor? As the emperor, you indeed shouldn't entrust your power to the pity of others. You have done what was right, Empress Dowager said. However, why do I still see hesitation in you? You are on guard against Cult Master Qin, yet you still indulge him. This isn't the way you do things. In order to carry out the reform with Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, you even allowed him to poison me, making me lie on the sickbed for so many years, unable to dabble in any political affairs. Such a ruthless man is the emperor of our Ling family. Emperor Yangfeng was full of guilt. Fu Yuanqing poisoning mother was indeed silently allowed by me. If I didn't do that, mother's influence in the imperial court would have simply been too huge, and it would have been very hard for Imperial Preceptor and I to control everything. I'm unfilial, but I could only let mother be quiet for a period of time. Even if there was no Minister Qin, I would still have had Fu Yuanqing remove the poison in mother's body after I took full control of the court. Empress Dowager sighed and said, "You have done well. You are really my son, your ruthlessness surpasses even mine own back then. So why aren't you laying your hands on Cult Master Qin?" Emperor Yangfeng was silent before saying tartly, I'm afraid, Imperial Preceptor, and I will fail, and once we fail, we will die miserably. The fate of the Empire, the lives of the people can't be all pinned down on me, and neither can they be pinned on our Ling family. I need a successor to continue the reform after Imperial Preceptor, and I fail. There's no one like this in Ling family, but Heavenly Devil Cult Master is such a person. Empress Dowager looked at his face carefully and sighed. I never thought that my son would be such a person. I have looked at you superficially. Emperor, let Xiao go with Minister Qin. If you think he can succeed you, let Xiao be with him. Our Ling family won't be wiped out even if Imperial Preceptor and you fail. Emperor Yanfeng's heart stirred slightly, and he carefully thought about the meaning of her words before nodding slowly. You are a good emperor, an Imperial Preceptor is also a good Imperial Preceptor. Empress Dowager looked at the mountains covered in fog with a peaceful face, and said in a gentle voice, I won't go against the both of you anymore. Feel free to change this world as you like, carry out the reform to your heart's content. I shall live in seclusion in this forest, to fight with these little hussies over my lover. Emperor Yanfeng's face turned black again, and he muttered, Mother, the face of the royal family. Empress Dowager basked under the sun and said with a smile that was not a smile, You're a filial son. So why won't you think about the happiness of your old mother? I have laid on the sickbed for so many years, and I clearly know it's Imperial Preceptor and your doing, but have I ever grumbled at you? I only have this wish right now, so let me go. Let me fight with these little hussies, to enjoy myself for the last bit. Emperor Yangfeng was solemn when he nodded. Does mother need my help to eliminate her competitors? I had climbed to the current position after countless hardships in the chambers of concubines, and you think I still need your help? You're underestimating me. At the lake beside the manor, Qin Mu took out a stick of incense and stabbed it on the shore ground, lighting it up. Ling Yuxiu sniffed the abnormal fragrance and asked curiously, "What's this incense for?" "This is soul guide incense," Qin Mu said with a smile. "I imprinted the runes of soul guide into this incense, and added over 100 perfumes into it. Even though there's no divine art of soul guide, it can still guide the way. If our primordial spirits get lost, when this incense finishes burning, the power of the runes will burst forth. When our corporeal bodies smell the fragrance, it will guide our primordial spirits back to our corporeal bodies. This way, there's no need for others to protect us." Ling Yuxiu already held Qin Mu's right hand, so he raised his left one for her to take as well. The two of them held hands, their eyes locked on each other. They smiled, and their primordial spirit instantly left their bodies. Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu both had the experience of their primordial spirit leaving their bodies to roam the void. After that, the two of them tried to cultivate them on their own, but the effect wasn't great. They were trying to cultivate what they had comprehended, but it was the act of changing coincidence into certainty, so it was naturally difficult. Back then, Qin Mu had met Xu Xinghua. He thought that the other was another overlord body, and his mind grew agitated. That had then led him to experience his primordial spirit leaving his body to roam the void with Ling Yuxiu by coincidence. Once their primordial spirits left their bodies, the two of them realized what they had done. Their luck was out of the ordinary, but it was just a random occurrence. How to change that coincidence into certainty was of utmost importance to them. At that moment, their primordial spirits had left their bodies and roamed together, trying to find the law of behavior in themselves. They noticed that their primordial spirits were tangled with each other and were resonating. It was different from primordial spirit dual cultivation they had experienced by accident the previous time. Primordial spirit was formed by the spirit embryo and soul. When it left the body, the souls resonated with each other, and the primordial spirits were also resonating with each other. There was a numbing throb that spread to all corners. Such a feeling was lasting and unforgettable. As the two youths roamed in the void, they saw flowers as big as woven mats. They didn't know their names. There was also grass like sharp swords, which they hadn't seen before. There were jellyfish in the sky, creating a magnificent scenery, which was very different from that of eternal peace. The youths lingered around. Is this what we are really seeing, or is it just a shared hallucination? The two of them enjoyed themselves and forgot to go back. But at that moment, they suddenly smelled a strong, abnormal fragrance and instantly felt that they were being guided back by an invisible force. Ling Yuxiu immediately grabbed a small fish while saying, "Whether it's real or a hallucination, we will know when we return back to our corporeal bodies." Swoosh! The boundless scenery in front of their eyes changed, and the vision suddenly vanished. They returned back to their corporeal bodies, where they stood with their hands together, and eyes locked onto each other. Ling Yuxiu let go of Qin Mu's palm, and saw a small fish flipping around in her palm. "It's real. How marvelous." She bent over and placed the little fish in her hands into the water. It swam and struggled, then flipped over and almost drowned. Ling Yuxiu immediately ran over and fished it out. She saw the little fish coughing with all its might, spitting out the water in its stomach before flapping its unproportionate fins to fly into the sky. While Ling Yuxiu stared at it in astonishment, the small fish flew back and spat a jet of water out of its mouth, spraying her face. Ling Yuxiu was furious and stretched her hand out to grab the fish, but it flapped its fins to fly away. "Stupid fish." Ling Yuxiu washed her face and turned back to ask curiously, "The one who herds cows, where did we go? Qin Mu pondered it for a moment before saying, it should be the East Sea region in Great Ruins. That place has a huge sea which later became a basin. The sea water has vanished, but the life forms there survived. Many fish learned how to fly, as did the flowers. The East Sea in Great Ruins. How far away is it? Over 70,000 miles. Ling Yuxiu jumped in shock, crying out, we went over 70,000 miles in the time it takes to burn an incense stick, and returned. Qin Mu nodded and stared blankly into the distance. Traveling 70,000 miles in such a short time is indeed unbelievable. Why can't the corporeal body be that fast? If the corporeal body had the speed of the primordial spirit, how good would it be? Ling Yuxiu burst out laughing. You are too childish. Primordial spirit has no weight, so it can naturally run faster. The corporeal body has weight, so it's naturally slower. Do you have more soul guide incense? We only focused on playing and didn't think about the technique to cultivate primordial spirit. We need to try again. Qin Mu reminisced about the marvel of their primordial spirits resonating together, and got slightly greedy. He immediately nodded again. We need to try again. We can't just focus on playing though, since this is an important matter. After the time it takes to burn an incense stick, the primordial spirits returned to the bodies again, and Qin Mu scratched his head. Do you want to go another time? Ling Yuxiu nodded gravely. This time, we'll definitely not play. Young people know how to play. In front of the hall, Blind was basking in the sun and talking to Deaf. Look at their sparkling youthfulness. They are brimming with enthusiasm and vigor, being so diligent with dual cultivating. Deaf, have you ever thought of finding a partner? Deaf ignored him and pointed at his ear holes, showing that he couldn't hear what he was talking about. Playing deaf. Blind sneered and propped himself on his cane to stand up. He hobbled over to Emperor Yanfeng's side and said, In-law, your daughter is currently dual cultivating with my Mua. Why are you puking blood? You are still scolding me. How can an emperor be scolding people? Where's the law? You still dare to hit me? You think I'm scared of you? Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu tried over and over again. When they had played enough, they finally agreed that they weren't going to finish the cultivation method of 6 directions primordial spirit if they continued like that. The two of them then became honest and started to analyze the cultivation method of 6 directions primordial spirit. I feel we can start from the resonation of souls and the primordial spirits. Ling Yuxiu said seriously. If the souls and primordial spirits of 2 people were to resonate together, they could lend each other strength to make their primordial spirits leave their body. Qin Mu nodded and pondered it for a moment. However, that's when the primordial spirit is already cultivated. What if it isn't? Before the resonation of primordial spirits, the main thing is to fuse the spirit embryo and the soul. Ling Yuxiu was excited. In that case, we shall start from the resonation of souls. Resonation of souls, using it to guide the spirit embryo, then fusing the soul and the spirit embryo to form the primordial spirit. Qin Mu's eyes lit up and he said, the technique will need 2 people to together. I will use my soul to guide your spirit embryo, and you will use your soul to guide my spirit embryo. At the instant when the souls mix, we will both leave our bodies. Our souls will then swap, and the primordial spirits will naturally be formed. The two of them looked at each other with extreme excitement. The theory had been voiced by them. Qin Mu's soul would guide Ling Yuxiu's soul and vice versa. The next step would then be the most important one. Their souls and spirit embryos would fly out of their bodies, and by borrowing the resonation to call out to each other, the souls would fuse with the other's spirit embryo. The resonation of primordial spirit would then assure that it wouldn't separate back into spirit embryo and soul. That way, Primordial spirit would be cultivated in 6 directions realm. Ling Yu suddenly became worried. The trouble here will be how to make this theory into technique, to guide one another's soul and spirit embryo. Qin Mu muttered to himself irresolutely, and walked 2 rounds. This kind of technique needs one to mobilize their primordial spirit, soul, and spirit embryo at the same time. The most crucial thing is that both of them can't be on guard against each other, but must be the closest of kin, so close that they can't have any selfishness. Only then can they hand their own spirit and soul to each other without any reservation. Ling Yuxiu nodded and felt a sweetness in her heart. When Qin Mu said it like that, didn't it mean that she was his closest kin, and he trusted her without any reserve? Don't ask how others can cultivate. Let's create the technique first. Qin Mu roused his spirit, and he made a few more soul guide incenses sticks. The 2 of them then used their souls to guide each other's spirit embryos, comprehending their own vital qi circulation method before recording it. After trying it out a few times, they were slightly tired and could only stop to rest. They had played too many times earlier, which resulted in their vitality being somewhat lacking. After 6 days, Qin Mu and Ling Yuxiu tidied up the general idea of the technique, and finally decided on the general principles. For everything else, they would have to make detailed corrections on the basis of the general principles. Butcher had yet to return from chasing Shingan, which made Qin Mu, Granny Sai, and the rest slightly worried. Shingan was too strong after all. If he solved the problem of the supplement, and his corporeal body returned back to normal, Butcher might not be his opponent. Shingan's medical expertise was remarkable, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to swap his body parts however he liked, so solving the problem with the supplement shouldn't have been too difficult for him. Cai Yinxiang, Yang Jingjing, and Hu Linga sat on a fast ship which sailed over from Relax Prefecture, bringing various herbs, cauldrons, and steamers. Qin Mu placed the matter of Butcher chasing Shingan aside and immediately became busy again. He raised the cauldrons and worked hard to brew the medicinal concoctions, cooking and steaming all the patients. Mua, those with low cultivation can't be steamed, they will get cooked. Granny Sai immediately said. I understand. Qin Mu arranged everything properly, and had the deer demons pay attention to the heat control, while he went to the true dragon's nest. He took out 5 legs and asked Cripple, Grandpa Cripple, look at these legs, which 2 of them are yours? Cripple differentiated them and chose 2 legs. These 2. Mua, why do you have so many legs here? What are they for? Qin Mu smiled and said, 4 spares. If Grandpa Cripple's legs go missing again, the other 3 legs can be used for replacement. Papa. Children's words carry no harm. Go knock on wood, knock on wood. Cripple spat twice, and Qin Mu immediately attended to him. He boiled a cauldron of medicinal concoction, and prepared his carefree sword, ointment, and dragon's saliva to reattach Cripple's legs. It was a walk in the park for him. After all, he had reattached Cripple and Butcher's body parts before, so attaching the 2 legs again was not difficult for him. It was even relaxing. Mua's craft is getting better and better. Cripple praised. This video will end here.